day over some asshole tweeting his response without even discussing it with his advisors. I'm off my high horse. Okay.
So let me jump in. Let me jump in for a second. So the problem is, do we even have much of a change in foreign policy from the Obama administration? In reality, from the Trump administration. I mean, Trump never left NATO, which was one of his big campaign promises. We still have troops in Iraq. We still have troops in Afghanistan. We still have troops in Syria, right? Nothing's really changed. He says he's going to do all these things, but nothing really has. It's maybe more of a dickish and prickish foreign policy that he talks about. It is. It's a pricklier, right? And he has. So he's pulled out of the Paris Accord. And who was it on Meet the Press this morning? BBC correspondent Caddy Kay even said all these things. It's a less principled foreign policy where it's not that, you know, America will lead and America will stand first on like climate change, and where before that was something that we were worried about against our military and things like that. But we're not. It's the same true foreign policy as the Obama administration. So really, not much has changed.
But he's redefining the narrative through appearances. What DJ's complaining about with Obama being so slow to respond to the 2009, Iranian Arab Spring is the same complaint that a lot of people had after Benghazi, that Obama didn't call it terrorism soon enough. They didn't define their terms soon enough. They didn't respond with a knee-jerk. And Donald Trump is very good at giving that immediate knee-jerk response and making people feel, yeah, hell yeah, America, we're so cool, we tweet shit.
Right.
But it's without substance.
George W. Bush did that.
He's a Potemkin president. It's a Potemkin foreign policy where it looks kind of cool.
People don't know what that means anymore.
I don't know. My daughter and I were talking about that word the other day.
Okay. For those who no longer remember the Soviet Union, it is essentially the idea of keeping up appearances. There was Potemkin was a village in the Soviet Union where the Soviets trained operatives for the United States, and it was essentially a little America right in the middle of the Soviet Union for their agents to train in. And so it becomes an example of essentially anything that is fake, you throw the Potemkin label on them. But I would like to actually respond to Kevin's points. And first of all, regarding the Obama administration, it should not have surprised them that the Iranian regime responded with bullets to the Green Revolution. They should not have had to wait that long. But we're not really talking about, the timing of that is a minimal issue. The problem is that there was nothing besides words behind what the Obama administration did. And sadly, there will probably be nothing besides words behind what the Trump administration did. So that is a very good point. Secondly, you're no trouble, Greg. As for what would have happened to Iran, I know that there are a lot of folks on the right who are upset about the Obama administration's actions in Libya and overthrowing Muammar Gaddafi. I am not among them. I think Muammar Gaddafi was a bastard. I think he was a terrible tyrant, and I was glad to see him go.
Here.
I would have preferred greater involvement afterwards, but the former President Obama himself shares a lot of blame with folks in all parties and all ideologies for essentially forgetting about Libya once Muammar Gaddafi was knocked out of the box. So while it is partially his fault, it's not entirely his fault. Just about everybody else is responsible for that, including his 2012 opponent, who really didn't pay any attention to Libya until something wrong happened at Benghazi itself. But I think, I don't care what would have happened to Iran had that regime come down. It would have been better than putting that regime in place. I will be one of the last 6 people on the planet who thinks liberating Iraq from Saddam Hussein was the right thing to do. I still think it's the right thing to do. I know what Iraq has gone through since then, but they've also had 3 free elections in the last 13 years for their federal parliament. They are on their way to becoming part of the free world. It's not easy. It is difficult. It can be bloody sometimes, but Iraq is better off today than it was when it was called the Republic of Fear under Saddam Hussein, and they use that term for a reason. The part of Syria that is outside of Bashar Assad's control, eastern Syria, under control of the Syrian Democratic Forces and other rebel forces, no longer Daesh or al-Nusra, they are better off now than they were under Bashar Assad, and all of Syria would be better off under those people than under Bashar Assad. And Iran would be better off without the tyrannical regime that rules them than they would be under it. I don't know if Trump understands that. He almost certainly doesn't. It's just that the fact that Donald Trump was willing to react that quickly and to make it clear that quickly that his heart, as shriveled and tiny and Grinch-like size as it was, at least went out to the protesters. I was at least happy about that. There will probably
and also,
be no
do we think
follow-up,
Donald Trump actually wrote the tweet? Because he's never used a phrase like "my heart goes out to." That sounds like Kellyanne Conway.
Well, if his lawyer wrote it for him, then hey, great. Let his lawyer write more damn tweets for him. Did Roy Moore's
Jewish lawyer write it for him? Or
I don't know. But the fact of the matter is, the fact of the matter is, we all should be agreed on one thing, and that is that Iran would be better if the people actually did control their government, which they don't do now. And I would like to see an American president, and I don't expect it from this one. I didn't expect it from the last one. I would have expected it from George W. Bush. I want to see an American president who says, yes, freedom for Iran is a priority. It would make the Middle East better. It would make America safer. Let's figure out how we can do that and what we can do. Trump is not going to ask those questions. I wish we had a president who would.
Just one note about Iran. I just saw a headline, and I'm trying to find it again, that women, for the first time since the revolution, will be allowed to appear in public without wearing religious modesty clothing. So that's a win. That's good
news. A step in the right direction.
It's a big step forward.
I mean, the fact that that was a law
for
so long sucks. But, that you will no longer get arrested for having your hair uncovered in Iran is a major step for women.
It is nice. It is nice to see that hijabs are no longer mandatory. Well, there are a bunch of other things that are mandatory that I'd like to see go by the wayside.
Well, yes, but baby steps sometimes.
Rebecca, it's the article I'm reading. It's from 3 days ago. It says police are scaling back punishments for women breaking, but they are still facing. And I'm using my air quotes. I wish you guys could see these because they're great. My air quotes.
Greg is the air quote champion of the Midwest. Yes. We should put that on his resume.
Yes, they still face education sessions. So, yeah.
Oh, so they don't have to go to prison. They just have to go to re-education camps. Oh, yes. How noble of the Iranian regime.
Yes.
All right.
Yeah.
If Paul Ryan was a key legislator in Iran, he would probably be moving to make the price of re-education camps tax deductible for private citizens.
But only if they were private re-education camps.
Right, private, not
only private.
Yeah,
that's a good one.
The tax deductibility of it actually goes to Betsy DeVos.
So let's talk a little bit about domestic policy.
That's what he was doing.
How do you say 529 in Persian?
The More Perfect Union, real debate without the hate, now heard on iTunes and Blog Talk Radio.
Okay, so let's
now that we've thoroughly bored Kevin beyond reason.
I actually tuned out for a second.
Exactly.
Which, of course, I hope our listeners are not doing. But I actually do want to change the topic for a minute from news and politics to what it is we do here. People at the beginning of a year will make New Year's resolutions, and usually it's it's stop smoking, or Rebecca does great ones like learning CPR and things like that. But, I think maybe it's time for us to be a little self-reflective on why we have this podcast, why people listen to this podcast, and what it means in the larger context of the national discussion that we're going to have going forward in 2018 and beyond. I'm going to stand on my soapbox again for half a minute. Politicians often say, we need to have a national dialogue about gun control, or we need to have a national dialogue about this, that, or the other. Hillary Clinton was famous for talking about wanting to go out and have conversations with the American people, and she doesn't want to talk, she wants to listen. Well, this really is the national dialogue. Podcasts have democratized media and the news analysis part of media in a way that 15 years ago, you still only had CBS, NBC, ABC, and CNN. Now we've got more news channels, but we also have individuals who are talking about the news. All of us here have some political background. We've all worked in campaigns. None of us has ever been a major national personality on the political scene. Yet people listen to us and care about what we think or find interest in how we look at the news. Why is that? I want to throw that out to you guys. I mean, DJ, you really are a special
DJ's
talent. I mean, we kid you about it, but you are a walking encyclopedia, and that's probably not giving you enough credit. But beyond that, what is it about what we do here that you think is important to our audience? And then we're going to go and give our audience their own voice in this conversation. But I just want to hear from each of you.
What the hell? I'll go first. I make myself go first just about every other conversation because that's who I am. And I didn't mean that as a compliment to myself, but here we are. I think what people say they want to debate the issues, they want to discuss the issues. And there are a lot of people who genuinely do, and there are a lot of people who, when they say that, what they really mean is, I want everyone to agree with me. I think what makes this podcast different, and what makes this podcast as well liked as it does, is that we can have disagreements, and we can still be friends. That is far less common than it should be these days. And perhaps it's easier that we're all relatively in the same party now, but it doesn't change the fact that most people who listen to this podcast for the first time will hear the differences of opinion and they will get surprised by it. In fact, I think, Kevin, you mentioned in our conversations off this podcast, one of the things that seems to frustrate our listeners the most is that my arguments don't get knocked down like 10 pins all the time. And that may be because a lot of folks, particularly on the left who hear this podcast, haven't heard my arguments much before. They generally hear the nonsense that spews out of what was the party that I was a part of. But I think what matters is to the listeners is that they can hear both sides of a viewpoint, and they can hear it from people who are still friendly to each other. That's something that is rare, and I think that is something that people like to listen to.
I did a podcast for a friend of mine. His podcast is it's a Lutheran podcast, and it was how to get along with your family while discussing politics. And that was the whole basis of it. And he asked me, he was like, well, you're the people on your podcast, they all seem to get along together. They're all friends and you disagree on politics. What's your secret? And I said, oh, that's easy. Editing.
Kevin, you got to keep that.
You got to keep that. And it's true. Sometimes it does get heated, which is kind of nice because we get it all out. And Kevin, by the way, does not get enough credit for the hours and hours each week he puts in for the editing, which is amazing. Which is awesome because I don't have to do it, but it sounds great. On top of that, one of the things that I really like about doing this, it's the end of the year, we should say this, is that we do. I can easily say, well, that was great, DJ. Thank you for your opinion. I don't agree with it, I don't have to tell him I don't agree with that. I can say, okay. And in the back of my mind, I'm thinking, that was horseshit. That was horseshit. and he knows I'm saying that by me saying, okay. In the South, they say, bless your heart. Or, but I can just say. He's not kidding. I can just say.
I have told more than a few Southern women in my time, bless your own damn heart.
I can just say, thank you. You've shared. And then he goes, right. And in his mind, I know he's thinking, converted another one to the tribe. But we just move on.
Oh, no, I never think that.
And we go on. And it's a great way to exchange ideas. Now, I have probably, since we've started